SpectreVision Radio.
I feel like every year people want to start doing new things and they start off the new year like, oh yeah, I'm about to, great. But even with this 2026 energy being a 1 year, a 10 year, this actually might be the time that you can actually maintain those changes, maintain those goals, and really show up as a leader in your own life. Welcome, 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 and Cabo Aquaba, bienvenido, Sakpase, Wagwan, what's up, yo? Welcome to A Little Juju podcast. This is the Africana and Ethereal podcast, diving deep into the medicinal, the magical, and of course, the ancestral spiritual tools that can help get us free. And I am your host, Juju Bae, author of the Book of Juju, Osun Priestess, Oreoluwa, Osun, and of course, your favorite big cousin conjurer. And I must say, y'all, Happy New Year's Eve. Can you believe we are almost at 2026, according to the Gregorian calendar? Because if we're going by the Yoruba calendar, it's actually like the year 10,000 something. I think the number is 10,067, but their New Year's is in June. If we were going by the Ethiopian calendar, we would be in the year 2018 going into 2019. But today, where I'm filming from, we are moving into 2026. We made it, child. I'm still here. Oh, I'm still here. Maybe by the skin of our teeth. But we made it, and I'm glad to have you here. Thank y'all so much for watching. As well as a reminder, this is a beautiful audio podcast, but we have a lot of beautiful things in the visuals on YouTube as well as Spotify. So if you want to see what's going on, get into some of the content that we show, all of the fun clips, be sure that you are watching A Little Juju podcast on YouTube and Spotify. 2026 is almost here. That makes it a 1 year. So if you are a numerology person, when you add up all the numbers of the year, so 2026 is 2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 6. All those numbers together is 6, 7, 9. That's a 10 year. And in numerology, you really focus on one number. So if we remove that 0, that is a 1 year. We can look at the 10 too, but it's a 1 year. So when we think about 1, this is the energy of rebirth, of starting over, of new cycles, creation. With that 10 energy, we're thinking of like big possibilities, big changes. It's really stepping into our leadership this year. We may see some changes or different kinds of leadership emerging, or people really wanting to change how leadership looks or redefining what leadership means, redefining power. All of that aligns with the 1 energy. You may have a lot of people around you giving birth, getting pregnant, but also maybe birthing new ideas. I feel like every year people want to start doing new things and they start off the new year like, oh yeah, I'm about to, great. But even with this 2026 energy being a 1 year, a 10 year, this actually might be the time that you can actually maintain those changes, maintain those goals, and really show up as a leader in your own life. So I think this is very promising. Of course, with this change around leadership, this change around power, bringing new things into the world, we must make sure that we are ushering the kind of births that we want to have, that we are ushering in the kind of changes that we can be a part of. And 2026 is going to ask us to step up to the plate. What does it mean to be 1? What does it mean to be number 1? But what does it mean to be 1 as like a part of a sum? Like we are all 1. So what is your purpose? Think about that as we are moving into this new year. Now, today is a mini-sode, and of course, because it's New Year's Eve, I want to talk, yes, about some of the folklore that exists around New Year's Eve, but also to give a little history lesson, and particularly as this relates to Black American people. I know we often talk about, Black eyed peas and collard greens for prosperity. Yes, we're going to get into that. But let's go back into some of the historical aspects of why New Year's Eve and New Year's Day are important days. So I want to give a shout out to Intellectual Media on YouTube. I actually just came across this creator's YouTube page, and she is a historian. She's so good. Like, she just feels like a newscaster. Like, she's so well researched. And she had this episode that was about Black history and also about New Year's. And so I wanted to shout her out. I'll of course have her information in the show notes, but some of the things that she talked about, I went to investigate further because I found them so interesting. When we think about during enslavement period, particularly in the United States and Southern United States, in the Confederate areas, New Year's time, New Year's Eve, and New Year's Day was actually a really troubling time. It was very, a lot of enslaved people were unsure of what was going to happen. This is a time where people would be separated from their families. Contracts on slaves would expire, so you didn't know if you were going to be staying on that plantation or you were going to be going to another one. You don't know if someone will want your child. You don't know if the plantation owner from across the way is going to come down and want to separate a family or buy a person from someone else. So in the African American community, they would refer to this New Year's time as Hiring Day, also Heartbreak Day. And this is the term that the abolitionist William Cooper Nell, how he described it, because as I said, enslaved people spent New Year's waiting and wondering if their owners were going to rent out one of their loved ones for themselves. And this was really common, of like renting out slave labor. Everyone wasn't always owned. In the same way that we rent things today, we must remember that people were also rented out. So the rent contracts would sometimes end, so they would have to move around. You know, this thing around New Year's and how we celebrate it and we're so excited about it, that is something that came sort of after emancipation, because we were able to figure out how we wanted to honor the day and celebrate the day and praise. When I did some research about how maybe indigenous African, West African folks may have honored New Year's, it wasn't in the same way that we do now, or like, it wasn't necessarily like January 1st everywhere is like, we celebrate New Year's. Now, there are some ancient rituals that acknowledged, it would be more around like harvest season.
Yam Festival marks out the outdooring of the first harvest of yams during the autumn season. The festival must be observed before the priests and elders can taste the new yam. The festival is normally celebrated between the month of September and October, which attracts priests and priestesses from Larte and its neighboring towns and villages to make sacrifice.
Or, you know, the crops are doing well and we're celebrating that. It's like we're able to feed ourselves. We've had good weather, you know, we're harvesting. But the more secular celebration of New Year's is actually something that's newer. Some important dates, though, on January 1st across the diaspora. The Haitian Revolution ended on January 1st, so that is the day that the Haitian people symbolically got their freedom from the French. Now, we know that that is still a tricky story, but on that day, January 1st, is when Haitians celebrate Independence Day. Now, the ban on the transatlantic slave trade happened January 1st, 1808. So we're thinking about the Emancipation Proclamation getting signed. It went into effect on January 1st. So what this brought about the tradition of watch night. And some people are familiar with watch night. Watch night services still happens. It was when enslaved people, before the Emancipation Proclamation went into effect, they were like waiting to hear it be announced to see if it would really happen. So they would go to the praise houses, they would go to their church, they would go to their places of worship and commune together. They would pray and they would wait. They would ask God to ensure that they, you know, would no longer be enslaved, all of that. So after the Emancipation Proclamation went into effect, we do know that that does not mean that enslaved people were immediately, it wasn't like, it's signed, hey, we outside. No, some people were still enslaved. That's why we have Juneteenth, and even beyond Juneteenth, some scholars have said that's not the last person that ever knew in the US once that slavery ended. But again, it went into effect in some instances symbolically, and in some places it did go into effect. And people who were in Union states particularly, they would also go to watch night services because they were also even if they were free blacks, they wanted to see what was going on. They were praying for their families, they were praying for their neighbors, they were praying for other people who were enslaved to ensure that it would go into effect. And that powerful coming together is something that has existed. So I know some people grew up with watch night services. I think I have been to watch night. That wasn't something that I recall necessarily when I went to Catholic church, but meeting and going to church on New Year's has been a thing for me. I think it just kind of depends on denomination, whether you call it like watch night, but the same thing, coming together, praying in a good new year, praying that good things are happening for your family or for your loved ones is still a common tradition we see today.
As the clock nears midnight on New Year's Eve, African American churches and African American families won't only be gathering to celebrate bringing in a new year, they'll also be ready to celebrate a tradition rooted in freedom.
Before the church was built, was nothing but bushes. And I used to think, I said, well, how in the world could they have a church built like this?
Bush Harbor is a scenario for a type of church. This wasn't the only Bush Harbor. Yeah. Apparently they were the early churches. Yeah. The very first ones were called Bush Harbor.
The narrator on this Mount Zion AME church video is talking about the very first African American churches made by slaves out of brush and trees, where they secretly praised and worshiped God. They weren't allowed to practice religion, but they did through songs, poems, and dance, also holding watch night services, awaiting the adoption of the Emancipation Proclamation, which would take effect on January 1st, 1863.
It was pretty much an outdoor sanctuary in the woods. And to my understanding, they would have blankets, wet blankets, I believe, blankets around in the woods to capture the sound so that the slave owners and people would not hear them. It's called hush because they would have poems, singing and praising God and all that. So
Pastor Victor Cole of Mount Zion AME Church says on watch night, enslaved and free black Americans watched and prayed because at midnight the proclamation became official. It declared freedom for enslaved people in Confederate states, a monumental though incomplete step towards liberation. Jacksonville native Sandra Maureen recalls attending a traditional watch night service as a child, where church members paid their respects to those who passed away that calendar year.
As a child, there was always the deacons who stood on the four corners of the church with usually black suits and white gloves, and they made it a very formal ceremony of calling the names out of the deceased from that year, moving into the next year, and it was a calling of the ancestors.
Now, of course, foodways is such an important part of New Year's. We cannot talk about New Year's without talking about the food that people eat. Now, we know the popular stories about having black-eyed peas on New Year's. I say all the time, I grew up with a mother who made black-eyed peas on New Year's. We did not have a New Year's where my mother did not make black-eyed peas for good luck. We had black-eyed peas. We normally have fish. Sometimes we had cornbread. Cornbread is also a sign of prosperity and wealth. And greens would be a sign of like money too, prosperity. And some families would do cabbage as well to represent the same thing. So Hoppin' John in the Carolinas is what would be used more often than black-eyed peas, which is what I would see. Hoppin' John is a type of field pea that would be used sort of to also, same vibe as the black-eyed peas, to bring in prosperity. I was reading that during slavery times that, the creation of soul food, sometimes during New Year's, the slave masters and slave owners would give the enslaved people the leftover scraps. They would give them the pork scraps. They may give them the hard stems of the collard greens, the leftover collards. And that in itself is what created the foodways that we see, particularly for African American people, and how we got to the ideas of like, okay, we're making something out of nothing. We're making something from the scraps, i.e. sort of the beginning of soul food, but also a part of how we get this lore around the foods that we need to eat in order to bring in goodness and blessing for us in the new year. So Gullah chef Charlotte Jenkins says in some households, it's also just as much about what you don't eat on New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. So for example, this chef said there's a belief that you want to stay away from eating anything that moves backwards faster than it moves forwards. So these are things like lobsters, crabs, shrimp, and crawfish, because the focus is on moving forward, moving ahead. Now, I feel like the girlies in Louisiana will have something to say about that, because I do know that gumbo is often eaten on New Year's as well, and that is filled with a lot of these crawling backwards animals. So everyone has their own family traditions around New Year's. Now, as I was looking, yes, we know greens for the prosperity, but in my research, I found some other ways that people have used these food ways to like bring in blessing. So the first I saw was a fresh collard green leaf on the forehead is actually used to aid headaches. So if there's any issues with the head, any problems, pain in the head, putting a collard leaf on the head is something that has been used traditionally to release the feel of the tension of a headache. Now, I didn't get detail into how, why, is there something in it? I don't know, but I saw that that's something that people do. The next thing that I saw was that putting a collard green on the door and hanging it on the front door wards off evil spirits. So I don't even think this necessarily is just for the new year. In general, as a way to clear the space or to keep the bad energy out, putting a collard green leaf on the door. Maybe I need to put a collard green leaf on the door. Hey, if any of you have ever put the collard green leaf on the door or have heard that before, get in the comments, because I want to know more about that. And the headache. So according to my research, I was reading that in Northern Europe, greens became synonymous for prosperity, and they were eaten a lot in British as well as Celtic colonies. And because of the Columbian exchange with Europe, West Africa, and across the Americas, that's sort of how collard greens became a part of the US sort of food tradition. Now, yes, that the Europeans were eating it and that potentially was brought over by them, but the ways that collard greens have been prepared and used was African American people. That is who sort of upped it. It was like, yeah, we have the greens here. It may be associated with different spiritual prosperous systems in Europe, but the way it was like we freaked it. I don't even know the right word to say. I just want to say we freaked it. We freaked it and made it something else. So there's not to say that there was not cross-cultural exchange, theft. We're taking this lore from you or moving that lore. That absolutely happened. But we have to give the credit to Black American, African American people who are doing with so little and made so much happen because of that. Now, cabbage, they say, was used more in German-dominated areas. So even through slavery, people who would have more cabbage could be enslaved by more German people. So as I mentioned before, after enslavement and emancipation, that is more when the secularized nature of New Year's Eve. That's when people started turning up and having fun. Now, when I was looking at intellectual media, who I mentioned earlier, the tradition around shooting guns is actually something that happened from Europeans. So she was talking to her family, I think she's from North Carolina, and she was saying that the gun shooting practice emerged from German settlers who chanted and shot muskets to possibly ward off spirits, but that was just a way of celebrating. They took their muskets and they were shooting Happy New Year. And so we see also how that tradition has lived through Black people. I don't know if y'all grew up in an area where people were shooting guns, but I did. I'm from Baltimore. And where I lived in Baltimore City when I was younger, they was always popping off. So we had a whole thing, like we didn't stand near the windows. We didn't be outside. Like if we were in that kind of area, we couldn't be by the windows because we knew people would always shoot guns. So I don't know if that's the same reason or people just like to shoot guns to celebrate. You know, we have fireworks, so for some reason New Year's is associated with being loud. So it could be part of that, but I did want to uplift this possible beginnings of where that came from. And of course, as guns became more available throughout the United States, more people shoot them and pop them off. But to go back into the food history, part of when I was doing this research, I have to be honest, I was feeling a little sad because it was like, dang, like all of this important historical history happened through slavery. Like it just felt like there's no separation. Like even if we're thinking about watch night, we're thinking about being sold on New Year's. We're thinking about making wonderful food from scraps. I'm like, this is all, we've made it work, but this is all rooted in so much pain and trauma. But then once I moved through the sorrow, I really have such a deep sense of pride, because it's not that African American history is rooted in only slavery. It is rooted in a powerful people. Like it's almost otherworldly how we have made things happen and shake. And if we recall that as we walk into this new year, remember who we are and whose we are. No matter what is presented to us at any time, we know who, what, and what we come from. If you are served scraps and you've made an entire foodway that will exist for eternity, some of people's favorite foods come from that soul food cuisine, that's power. And so we don't have to see our history as something that's limiting, but actually something that really showcases what we are made of in a way that's bigger than resilience, like what we are truly cellularly made of. And that made me really proud. So on this New Year's Eve, I wish you all such great and deep blessings. I hope that you have a wonderful New Year. If you want to eat your gumbo or your black-eyed peas and your cornbread, your fried chicken, your fried fish, I hope you enjoy. I hope your house is clean, and even if it ain't clean, it's okay. As my grandma would say, you have to have a man walk in your house on New Year's Day with money in his left pocket to ensure that your home continues to bring in money. But if you don't have a man, get a stud. Anything works. I think just have somebody walk into your house with money in the pocket. We have remixed and changed these traditions for what works. So I will have my mask presenting girlfriend coming through the house with money in the pocket, because we do need to keep the tradition alive, but I do not need a nigga to do it. So thank y'all so much for watching. I'm sending you all so much love, and let me know in the comments, what New Year's traditions do you have in your family, or do you want to create for your family to come? Thank y'all for watching. Happy New Year. And remember, all you need is a little juju and maybe some black-eyed peas. Bye, y'all. Happy New Year.
All you need is a little juju. All you need is a little juju. All you need is a little juju. All you need is, all you need. All you need is a little juju. All you need is a little juju. All you need is a little juju. All you need is, all you need. A little juju is the way. It's how I start my day. Can't firm no slave. And I'll never do play. I'll take it for the
Lucille Clifton, I am running into a new year. I am running into a new year, and the old years blow back like a wind that I catch in my hair, like strong fingers, like all my old promises, and it will be hard to let go of what I said to myself about myself when I was 16 and 26 and 36, even 36. But I am running into a new year, and I beg what I love and I leave to forgive me.